Thank you so much, Richard, for joining me today here at SIGGRAPH. Yeah, I am super excited to actually be able to sit down and have this conversation with you and show you some of the examples too. I have a couple surprises, I guess, throughout the way related to Gaussian splatting and the different Radiance field representations. And so, yeah, I'm really looking forward to chatting about media and entertainment.
Me too.
So I'm kind of curious, actually. We've spoken about this before, but I'm curious about when you first came across Radiance field representations and what that was like for you. Was it like NeRF, or when did it?
Probably NeRF, and starting to see the experiments of what could be done by capturing through photographs and turning to 3D, and just kind of seeing where that would lead us, and how fast it's moved along. So, because ideally what everybody wants is to be able to sample the world around them and learn from it and use it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like you've had a really long career in media and entertainment, and you've been able to see a progression towards 3D and being able to really get into a three-dimensional space and be able to manipulate it and use for production purposes. So I imagine for you it's a pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, this is my 40th SIGGRAPH.
Oh, congrats.
Just to really put some age there, but. Every time, it's always the first one in '85 I will never forget, because it was just the scene in The Wizard of Oz when the door opens up and the world is all color. It was kind of like that for my first experience at SIGGRAPH, seeing what real big computer graphics were doing. I had been doing some stuff on smaller systems, but to really see what was the birth of, prior to Pixar becoming Pixar and meeting all these folks there. And ever since, it's always every few years there's something bigger. And then, when 2018, real-time RTX rendering was something that, we had dreamed about all those years ago, and to see it happen, it's just hard to put into words. It's really something that's so visual that you've got to experience it.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's part of the reason why people are getting so excited too about the latest Radiance representation, which is Gaussian splatting, and NVIDIA also has the 3D Gaussian unscented transform too. And people are very excited about it because of how lifelike it's able to really translate just normal 2D images into a very lifelike 3D world. I've seen really large industry players such as NVIDIA, as well as Chaos and Otoy and Side Effects and Houdini actually ship Gaussian splatting quite rapidly and compared to some of these other technologies. And so I'm kind of curious, why do you feel like all these very large players are actively adding support?
Well, I think it's because they know that the audience that they ship to is willing to take the jump with them and experiment with it. As you just saw in the keynote earlier, we take all of this technology and show what's possible, but it's really what the reality becomes when it's in use by the customers and the developers that are out there. So, we love to get it out there quick, sometimes even just, still wet paint, if you will, because we know that the developers that get hold of it are going to take it to a whole nother place. And that's the exciting part, you know that you're giving it life.
Right, exactly. And I feel like it's just such an exciting time for developers and the world at large who gets to actually enjoy the work that's being created from these engineers. When we also talk about the keynote, I actually want to highlight a couple of the keynotes that have happened so far this year in 2025, both at CES and then at GTC in March. And we've seen in NVIDIA co-founder and CEO Jensen Huang's addresses, he's actually been directly incorporating now Gaussian splatting to visualize the Endeavour and Voyager offices in Santa Clara. And so I'm kind of curious, how has NVIDIA kind of seen this creative tool to be able to bring people to locations?
Well, just that, a creative tool that actually can bring people into that environment that you're telling them or showing them about by bringing them into the 3D location. It's a much different experience for somebody. When you look at an image, you see an image and you can look at that statically. When you see an image and it comes to life and you can see around it and you can kind of get inside that space, it takes on a whole nother character to it. And I think that the more we see things like that, the more we can envision what that's going to be like in the media and entertainment space. You're going to have much more immersive experiences when you go to see films and other types of entertainment or sports and things like that. At home, you're going to be able to experience it in a whole new way. You'll be able to turn things around, watch it at this angle, watch your favorite player, things like that. So I think when you come to a CES or a GTC, any keynote that Jensen does, he's giving you the glimpse into what's possible and where the road is headed. And when you see that, and then you know, just look a few years ago when it was the real-time ray tracing. Where's that going to lead? And within a few years, you saw it in games, and you saw it in all these other use cases. Now it's industrial and films and such. And so when you see this kind of stuff in a keynote, you just know, okay, this is going to be everywhere really, really soon.
Right, exactly. It's very exciting for me personally because, you know, for both of our lifetimes, like the main way we've interacted with imaging has largely been in just 2D. And I feel like we've entered in a foundational period where we're now beginning to be able to extend that same imaging experience into very lifelike 3D.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at the history of just VR and stuff. You know, VR has been around for a long time, and everybody wears the bulky headsets and stuff, but that's starting to evolve. We're starting to see it now with much higher fidelity headsets, you know, the Vision Pro, and the stuff that they've done tying into Omniverse for real-time photorealistic experiences. And you put that on, you're in that location. Take that another step further. Those are going to get smaller. The capability of capturing that environment is going to get quicker and more remote in any kind of sense of the word. You're going to be able to go to places you've never been by simply using these technologies combined with all this other, you know, the headsets or your device in your hand, things like that. It's going to be a fun ride.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like we're kind of like rediscovering imaging all over again in some capacity.
Always. And, you know, it's like that, like I said, that moment from black and white to color where it becomes a whole nother experience for you. From, you know, 2D to 3D, from immersive, you know, from a static 3D to an immersive 3D. And what does that do? And just, you know, the idea of the holodeck is really not that far away.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I think it's a lot sooner than people might imagine. And so one of the ways, too, that I think people might not even know that it's already coming is, I don't know if you've seen the Superman movie that just released yet.
I haven't seen the whole thing. I've seen various clips and stuff, but it's on my list.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you've seen the parts where, towards the very beginning of the film, with Superman's parents, essentially reading out a message to him in essentially like a damaged video. But as it turns out, that video is actually fully Gaussian splatting. Everything that is shown of his parents is a dynamic Gaussian splat, and it looks so perfect that it just looks 2D. And so it's already, I think, crossed that like fidelity threshold where we don't know to expect 3D to look so lifelike at this point.
Yeah, and when it becomes invisible, that's when you know that it's really taken on. I mean, that's the whole key of a visual effect in film and TV and stuff, is you don't want the audience to go, wow, that was a visual effect. You want them to go, wow, what's happening on the screen? Is it a dinosaur? Is it his parents? All those things play into what to me is the most fundamental aspect of technology in media and entertainment, and that is to support the story, right? So when you see these technologies, you don't want people to walk out and go, did you see those technologies? You want to have people to walk out and go, that was an incredible film, or that was an incredible story, and that helped make that story come to life.
Yes, exactly. And I think that one of the nice things about Gaussian splatting as well is not only does it blend in perfectly to just a normal 2D environment, but it also, I was able to interview the VFX team that worked on it, and what they told me is that Gaussian splatting, because they were capturing everything just all at once, they had significantly more time to actually figure out what the message should look like, how they wanted to film it. They were actually able to revisit the shot several times in
You
post.
get more iterations, you get more creative options. That's the whole idea of technology in these situations, right? It wasn't that long ago where the visual effects would take months, years to get done outside of the film and then got brought back into the film, and the director was basically almost disassociated from that process. The more we bring it into the camera, the more it's what the director wants to direct and interact with live on the scene. It really takes us back to the true purity of a director and the actors on the stage and things like that. You think about what goes on in a theatrical experience, and that's really what's starting to take place in the cinematic and CG experience, is it's taking place in the camera. Gives for more options and gives for more creative license for the director to just kind of play around with things. It used to be you get 3 shots today, that's all we can afford to do today. But now with virtual production, splats and all these things, I can do 12 locations today, I can do this, let's try it from a different angle and stuff like that. And that all, again, supports the story that they want to tell.
Right, exactly. There's a company, Pixamondo, out of Toronto that has really been using Gaussian splatting very well for virtual production, whereby they have a 3D printed, essentially like scepter, where they have like 6 different Sony cameras, and they're just walking through and going to capture locations, very high fidelity, and then bringing it onto like a virtual, LED volume, and being able to just bring the location to the crew rather than bringing everyone
exactly
there.
And then the director can manipulate that around and do things with it, and think beyond the wall, right? We're going to now the LEDs are getting so cheap and stuff. You're going to see the LED walls, but LED objects and floors and all of that kind of stuff, so that they can manipulate the entire environment around the actors and say, well, no, I want it to be this. I want the table to be changed, and they'll be able to do those things in real time without the actors trying to pretend the green table is going to be what they're talking about. It's actually going to look and feel like what they want. So you combine all those things together, and it's, like I said, it's getting back to the purest of the director directing the actors on stage.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it really empowers creativity and lets it like legitimately expand into 3D and let them just figure out like what is the best way to tell this story that we're trying to tell. I wanted to ask about like media too as well, and get your thoughts on if it fits in.
So for media is part of our DNA. Media and entertainment has been what NVIDIA was built on in the early days, and when you see all of the stuff that's gone on. But it's also been something that for a long time we're taking it for granted a little bit. Like, yes, the next film is going to be made using our latest and greatest, and yes, it's going to be wild and great. And we started to realize that we really needed to put some more energy back into what media and entertainment is about, because there's so much changing. And so the initiative of what we call Media 2 is really about AI across all the media workflows, right? Better efficiency in location scouting, better optimization in how you're utilizing your resources. And yes, of course, there's AI in the imagery and things like that can be created. And part of it is to help demystify the AI. It's not something that people should be fearful of, but there are a lot that are. It's not something that is, out to destroy Hollywood and things like that, but there are people that think that. Actually, AI has been around in media and entertainment for many years. What is simulation, right? Look at, all types of tools have been around, de-aging and things like that for many years. It's only recently when we've seen the emergence of generative AI and imagery and camera work be done that has caused people to be a little bit shocked and surprised and scared and excited and all those things at the same time. But again, if you take it back to its core principle, it's about the story. And so one of the missions that we have around Media 2 is not only to help better efficiency with all the things I was talking about, but it's also to help demystify. AI isn't here to, to demolish things. It's actually here to help democratize things. The more people that can tell their story, the more content that we're going to be able to enjoy. And I firmly believe that, one of the things that we see with AI is getting it in the hands of more people allows for those stories to be told. And I think sometimes the fear comes with, well, doesn't that take it out of the core places that movies are made, if it's Hollywood or it's London or something? Yeah, so music did that, right? We have Grammy Award-winning records made on laptops from Midwest and other far-off locations, and why can't Academy Award-winning films be done the same way? So the democratization of the capabilities that it takes to make that high-fidelity quality film now to be in the hands of more people means we're going to get to enjoy more stories, and just who knows what they're going to do. But I think it's something to be celebrated and embraced. And I will say that with the complete understanding of the need for the responsibility for it, right? We're not just taking it for granted. Guardrails and ensuring that the content has been trained properly, and all of those things are super important. But I think at the end of the day, more people having access to these tools means there's going to be more content for people to enjoy.
Yeah, I agree, and I feel like it's going to help bring locations that perhaps we've never been to before, been able to experience into directly in front of us.
Right.
And
maybe we won't get the same film made over and over and over, even though I'm sure it's good and I look forward to seeing it. But I think one of the challenges that we have in the entertainment space is you know, just because the movie was great 5 years ago, you don't have to make it again.
Right.
Go find somebody else, make something new, get some new stories out there. And the democratization of these tools means there's going to be a lot more willingness to take chances with independent films and independent filmmakers that are out there. And that, to me, is a really exciting turning of the corner.
Yeah. I'm curious as well, because we were talking a little bit about like the Wizard of Oz and how that was so transformative from going from like black and white and, you know, going into the land of Oz and being totally in color. Do you see like that type of moment like approaching for general 3D film as well?
I think we're going to see more and more immersive and hyper-localized content that is more personalized to the people that are viewing it. You might watch something and have the ability to control some elements of it. You will be able to localize it to certain regions in the world. Like if you make a film, you know you want it to be accepted in a certain area. They may have requirements or things about that. AI is going to be able to help shape that so that your story is still contained, but it's you know, it's more admissible to that particular location. So yeah, I do think we're on the cusp of this next generation of entertainment, which is going to be much more personalized, localized, and much more immersive if you want it. There'll still be the time to sit back and just watch a film in much the same way there still is a time to sit back and read a book. It doesn't mean we're doing away with things. It means we're opening up new doors.
Along those lines as well, I'm also interested in the world of like sports, because people really, you know, love interacting and getting as close to the action as they can. You know, you see, you know, people paying premiums to sit courtside or right by the dugout. And I'm curious from like your perspective, like how we might see the world of sports become more immersive.
I think we're starting to see that already. You know, we have a great startup program called Inception. There's a lot of media companies in Inception. There's Arcturus, there's Viewpoint Pro. These are companies that are using AI technology to make the game much more interactive and much more immersive for the viewer. So you can watch the game from any angle. You kind of get to gamify it, if you will, and in your own home, on your own TV, get to manipulate the view of that game. So we're starting to see things like that happen, or the idea of being able to be anywhere you want in the stadium to watch the game, and that's what Arcturus is doing. So a lot of these startups understand that people really, they don't just watch a sports game, they really get themselves inside the sports game in the sense of knowing all the stats and the data and all of those things and the locations. And so if you combine all those things together, you're going to have much more access to the information of the players that you're following. You're going to get much more ability to kind of put yourself wherever you want to see. Let's watch that shot again. I want to be behind the plate. I want to be over in this field and stuff. Again, just to make it much more of an exciting experience for you.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like people connect with imaging and, you know, either video or just 2D images because they have like an emotional connection to it. It makes them feel like they were there, and you know, you can get much closer than we have traditionally had the opportunity to thus far. And I think as well from like the team side as well, for say like reviewing, you know, individual plays or performance.
Yeah, from a coach standpoint, think about what it does from that standpoint. You know, that you can rewatch the game and then you can watch it from any angle and you can give instructions to the player like, here's where you did this, or here's where you did that. Lots of things like that, as well as the observational aspect. Like, we know every time this batter gets up to bat and he does this with his feet, he's going to hit a curve, you know, he's going to hit out to left field or whatever. So there's lots of aspects that just brings in more information, what you do with that information, how you experience it from the fan base. So all of those things, just it's more information and more access to it, and what you do with it makes it more exciting.
Yeah, I'm curious as well if there's like any future of 3D that you feel like we also similarly might be heading towards that might not be on the general, you know, population's radar.
Boy, that's, you know, I think that where 3D is going to be as easy to capture as a photograph on your phone. I think you're going to be able to look around at a location and just go, and you're going to have the entire location with you. And I think that's going to become more and more commonplace. So you're not just going to remember a photograph, you're going to remember a location, and you're going to be able to relive that location and walk through it and experience it, things like that. I think, you know, because that's memories are really important to people, right? And if you see some of the technologies that go to older photos and films and can bring them to life a little bit, that's very heartwarming. Take that to another level of where, you know, you can be at that location you were on vacation and experience it again with your kids, or you can be at the dinner table when you were little and listening to the parents, whatever. All those types of things, people get a real warm feeling about that. And I think those are the types of things that people can really relate to as to why this kind of technology is so meaningful in so many different ways. Yes, there's the sports and the entertainment and there's other things, but there's also the heart. And those things bring it right back to the heart.
Yes, I again completely agree, and that's where I'm really most excited for, is the actual memory capture and preservation of individual moments in time, because I feel like for the last 100+ years, that's where general consumer photography has grown into, just allowing us to document the human experience.
Yeah. Imagine if you had your entire life documented. Maybe you don't want it all, but some of it you would, like, oh, I remember that time. I think those are the kinds of things that we'll get. But I think that location memory aspect is what's really exciting. When you take a trip and you go someplace for the first time, and if you're in the hills of Italy or you're in the streets of Tokyo, and to be able to bring that back with you and be able to relive that and share it, and tell your kids, you need to take this trip, look at what this is like, and things like that, that's a very meaningful aspect of this technology, I think.
Yeah. I think we're going to see a revision to camera design on the hardware side.
Blackmagic's got their new immersive camera that works with the Vision Pro. That looks really interesting. But I think more and more we're going to see that kind of thing. And when you combine it with what we're talking about, splatting and things, having that technology be in your hand,
right,
and be able to do things like, oh, I like this, and I have this.
Right. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the future, and I feel like it's really not that far at all away.
Believe me, this being my 40th, it goes by like that. So brace yourself.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really
pleasure.
Appreciate the conversation, and I'm looking forward to the immediate future.
Great. Same here.